It's a great pleasure today to be talking to Carol Kauffman for the next in our Research Practitioner series. Carol is a major contributor to our field, not only as an academic, she's assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, but also as an author, as a coach. I'm an astonishing number of coaching hours. I think you've done over 40,000, haven't you, Carol? Astonishing number. And as a educator and also as a supporter to others to do their own work in this field. Her contribution has been amazing. So it's a real pleasure to have you here today, Carol. Thank you.
I'm glad to do this.
Okay, Carol, I wonder if we could kind of start by looking at you coming into the field of coaching. What brought you into coaching?
I think coaching is the most shame-free type of behavioral change approach that there is, which is the main thing that drew me. However, I became a coach because I'm a procrastinator and I needed my continuing ed credits for my psychology license and had to do it in 48 hours because I procrastinated. And there was a coaching workshop that
Okay.
was being offered by this man, Ben Dean, who also worked with Marty Seligman. So I took the workshop and then I won free tuition. So
Oh
that was
gosh, yeah.
my introduction to coaching. And after 1 week of learning about coaching, it felt like a near miss car accident. Like, what if I had missed this? What if I
Mm.
hadn't done this? It was more congruent with my work and how I feel than any other medium. So that's how it started, and that was in 2003. Starting before that, I did what I had thought was coaching, which was peak performance training and consultation. I had done that for a few years, and it's very different from coaching.
Yes, great. And of course, you come into coaching with a background in psychology as well.
Yeah.
So, how does your psychology inform what you do as a coach?
A lot. Probably my sort of the main orientation is sort of informed by positive psychology um, and coaching psychology. But I was also trained in a psychoanalytic approach. I mean,
Mhm.
in the old days, I had patients I'd see 4 times a week for like
Right.
years.
Yes.
And what stayed with me from that is just how our past really does truly inform our present. I also did a postdoc in cognitive behavior therapy.
Hmm.
And so I think all those layers come together along with a systems perspective. So for me, it's what's going on kind of physically, emotionally,
Mm.
in your context, how you think, etc., with a slant towards the strengths-based approach.
Right. Okay. So, what about the other way around? What do you think coaching can contribute to psychology?
Ah, a lot. Um, a number of things. One is just bringing a one of the ways I think of it is that in therapy, you follow the trail of tears to get to healing, and in coaching, you
Mm.
follow the trail of dreams to get to your optimum life that's in
Right.
alignment with your
Okay.
values. And
Mm.
the idea of being able to kind of do both.
Yeah.
I think coaching psychology kind of is a major bridge there.
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting approach to it. And you also mentioned already some other parallel fields which are kind of you draw upon. So, what in particular do you think are the parallel fields that make an important contribution to coaching and coaching psychology?
Um, I'd be hard pressed to find one that doesn't, but I'd say anything that is more or less, hopefully more evidence based. And there, I think the approach I would call is sort of technical eclecticism, which is basically somewhat evidence based and it works and it fits the moment.
Yeah.
I wrote an article years ago what did I call it? I think I called it Model Agility for Division 13 and for the American Psychological Association, the culture of the consulting division. And what I did there was I took a session. And then what I did is I imagined there was 4 people from 4 different perspectives: adult development, psychodynamic, cognitive, and positive psychology / coaching perspective,
Yeah.
and how each one of those would have thought about the engagement differently. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, that's the big one. I think coaching psychology is a tremendous way to pull together and the different theoretical approaches and help you synthesize them, but again, continue to tilt towards the light, continue to
Yes.
tilt
Yes.
towards the strengths and what you can accomplish,
Mm.
rather than just what's wrong with you and
Mm.
in your way.
Mm. Yeah. Great. And of course, a big part of your contribution is the founding of the Institute of Coaching. So I wonder if you can talk a bit more about that.
Okay, I would love to. Um, the Institute of Coaching is actually the brainchild of Ruth Ann Harnish. And in about the year 2000, when the field was just really
Mm.
coalescing, her vision at that point was that if the coaching profession was to become something respected, it needed to have an evidence, research, and theoretical base. So she first started the Foundation for Coaching
Mm-hmm.
and started awarding grants dedicated to coaching. And then she and I started working together. And in 2009, she transferred all of that to Harvard and gave us a $2 million grant to start the Institute of Coaching. And the first mandate of that was to be a dedicated place for people to apply for research grants in coaching. Now, of course, we were really tiny. It was all of like 100,000 a year, but that helped a lot of graduate students.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Tony Grant was
Yeah.
early. Michael Kavanaugh, I
Mm.
think, probably got grants. A whole bunch of people. So that
Yeah.
was very exciting. Now that was part 1. So I'll let you ask about that before I then talk about part 2. Do you have
Okay.
questions about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can in terms of the other thing you would seem to be doing with the Institute is kind of, it wasn't just about academics doing this. You were trying to encourage practitioners into becoming active in coaching.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I do encourage that, and it's actually not easy for
Mm.
them to do it by themselves. But what does work is to partner
Mm-hmm.
with someone who is an academic,
Mm.
because and even to have a bunch, because the practitioners are the reservoir you
Yeah.
need to draw upon.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're just talking about angels on the head of a pen, you know, who cares?
Yeah.
Okay, so the linguistics of coaching is lovely. Okay, now out in the real world,
Yeah.
how does sort of micro behaviors about language
Mm.
impact how engaged people are with the coaching? What kind of impact it makes on their lives? And what do other people see? So I
Yeah.
sort of see that as really crucial, that it's this bi-directional positive relationship between the theory, the research, and the practice of
Mm.
coaching, and then
Yeah.
the practice back to the theory and
Yeah.
research.
Yeah. I remember in the early days of the Institute, you would try and looking to kind of build, well, what are the key questions that we need to be thinking about? And it was that kind of strategic approach to, well, what is the evidence base we need to be thinking about, rather than simply, well, what any old research. So there was a kind of real sense of strategy behind what you were trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that and you know this more than I do, but first it was, does coaching work?
Mm.
And then we did get just a whole bunch of thumbs up on that. But then it's like, okay, well, how does
Yeah.
coaching work? And
Mm.
then what's your understanding of the the moderator and the mediator variables that make
Yes.
coaching work? What is it that coaching does that then changes how people function? And then all of the kind of micro details
Mm.
about coaching and how that helps the field. So I think we're kind of just getting just more mature
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a field. And one question I ask people frequently when they're trying to describe the coaching is to answer the question, what's your understanding of what makes your coaching effective?
Mm. Yes. Yeah. And you said that was part one and part two?
So part one of the Institute was the whole idea of promoting the research and theory and then disseminating that to the world. And so, for example, Margaret Moore, who actually is the force behind the Institute of this incarnation existing, and I can tell you
Yeah.
that story sometime. But she's brilliant at writing what we call research doses. So if you go to the instituteofcoaching.org
Yeah.
and you look up research doses, it takes a piece of research and then describes how you can use that in your practice.
Yeah.
So part one, the research itself. Part two, the translation of that into what you can do. And then
Yeah.
part three, creating the community of coaches.
Yeah. I mean, it's an important part of kind of thinking about coaches. It's not just coaches being involved in doing research, but actually the extent to which coaches can use research and actually draw on the evidence. Because it's, from my experience, quite a lot of the coach training programs don't really focus enough on the coach as consumer of evidence.
Yeah, right. And in clinical psychology, it's just as bad, if not
Yeah.
worse.
Yes.
So you're not alone. But even just things like okay, self-determination theory.
Yeah.
Okay, self-determination, we want to be self-determined. Okay, cool. All right. So then it's like, what are the basic three psychological needs it talks about, which is, need for autonomy, relatedness, and competence. Okay, cool. Well, now what?
Yeah.
So for me, for example, I'm coaching a CEO and he's describing, it's actually very funny. He was describing a disastrous meeting that he had. And and him moving in, his typical not listening, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, how did that meeting go? And he
Mm.
said, well, my most valued person quit. And I said,
Yeah.
oh, would you like that to not happen again? And so we talked, and he was someone he didn't want to be coached. His
Yeah.
actually first response to our first engagement was, how long is this going to take? I mean,
Yeah.
literally. So when I said, do you want that not to happen again?
Yeah.
Now he was interested. And for me, by the way, I am a combination of coach and leadership advisor.
Mhm.
I would say probably 80-20. So
Mm.
I'd say 20% of what I do is offering, teaching, etc. I never do pure consulting of
Yeah.
telling someone what to do
Yeah.
because I don't know,
Yeah.
but I am very comfortable with saying, I don't need for you to do this. I don't know if you should do this. I just want this to be in your repertoire of choices. So I'd say I go back and forth. So with this person, I said, okay, now we're talking about self-determination theory in practice.
Yeah.
So I said, so did you know that people have psychological needs? To
Yeah.
which he said, they do?
Yeah.
I'm like, kill me now. So then I just described a little bit of self-determination theory, just so if you're really wanting to create an environment where these kinds of things can't happen or less likely to happen, and describing that, and just very simple. I mean, you can do all kinds of fancy schmancy stuff to integrate this theory with, but literally very often just a mini tutorial.
Yeah.
If you're okay as a coach to be giving mini tutorials, and that was completely life-changing for him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I remember being confronted by a CEO of a major company once when I was coaching, and he'd been told he had to come to coaching, So
Oh yeah, I
it
get
was a
that.
bit like that. Okay, how much time is this going to take? And
Yeah.
his opening statement was to me, look, I have two PhDs. What could you possibly teach me? And kind of,
Oh, what'd you
oh,
say? What'd you
I
say?
said, well, I'm not here to teach you anything, you know. I'm not here to tell you how to do your job. What I'm here to do is help you think about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and some of the things that are working well and some of the things that are not working so well. Yeah. And we
So, but you
eventually
know
got
what?
there.
But that leads to another thing, which I just want to, I think is like, I don't know what the research is on this, but basically what you're talking about is a non-defensive stance.
Yeah.
So when my guy said, how much time is this going to take?
Yeah.
I said something like, well, that depends on you. I don't believe I need to make you conform to my structure.
Yeah.
I'll fit into yours. But I think that's a very important because you did the same thing because
Yeah.
you also have a PhD. You know more
Yeah.
this guy. You didn't
Yeah.
say, well, I've got 7,000 million years of experience with idiots like you.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just sort of like an offer, like here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly so. And the other thing, just going back to the institute, these, as you say, these little kind of small pieces on there, which actually summarize research, is just such a useful resource to the practitioners who are actually interested in really addressing, okay, how do I build an evidence base for my practice?
Yeah, and yeah, what can I actually do? So,
Yeah.
like for example, with self-determination theory, the research shows that being a micromanager
Yeah.
is one of the worst has the one of the worst impacts on engagement.
Yeah.
And so that's just like, oh, so if I'm seeing my person is doing that,
Mm.
that helps direct me.
Yeah.
And then you can be informed with, okay, you can deal with that from a cognitive behavioral coaching perspective, from a somatic perspective,
Mm.
from a positive psych, from a strengths. I mean, there's all kinds of different coaching perspectives that you can use to inform your questions and your mindset.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it matters to you helping practitioners think about the use of evidence and engaging in research. What do you think are the kind of main stories that they need to hear in terms of that?
Okay. I think there's probably a collection of sort of basic psychological theories to know
Mm.
that will help you guide yourself. I mean, I love
Yeah.
self-determination theory as one. Um, the Prochaska stages of change
Right. Yeah.
as another, where whenever I'm coaching someone, I warn them about stage 5. I'll say, so listen, you like I'll say, so they'll decide what they're going to do. And I say, okay, it's really, I'm very glad you do know you're not actually going to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
they're like, what? I said, actually, literally what I said to one person, you can edit this out. I said, okay, just because you've had a come to Jesus moment, that
Yeah.
screaming at people isn't the way to go, doesn't
Yes.
mean you're going to be able to stop screaming. It's been
Yes.
30 years.
Yeah.
So here's what's going to happen. You're going to have some things happen, and maybe you'll be able to not scream. I go, in
Yeah.
which case, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Most likely, what you're going to do is you're going to watch yourself and listen to yourself screaming at someone while inside your head, you're saying, stop doing it. I said, but you're not going to be able to stop doing it.
Yeah.
I said, and that's okay.
Mm.
Right now, that's what success is.
Yes.
It's the contemplation and it's in your head, but you're not able to do it yet.
Yeah.
That's not the time to give up.
Mm.
That's the time to know that you're in a very awkward phase of change, which is like feeling the muscle burn.
Yes.
And then just sort of having that to help your client be oriented so they don't give up.
Yeah.
It's like you're on a diet and you're watching yourself eat chocolate cake, going, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake while you're eating
Yeah.
cake.
Yeah.
That's how change happens. That's
Mm.
going through, and that phase is necessary.
Yeah.
And the change isn't linear. So,
Yeah.
self-determination theory, Prochaska's. And the other one is, I think, Bob Keegan and Lisa Leahy's work and everything on, are you in socialized self,
Yeah.
self-authored, or transcendent? So I think it's sort of, what are those
Mm.
sort of like can you work your way forward being informed by these approaches? And of course, positive psychology and
Yeah.
coaching psychology, knowing your way around cognitive distortions. And what I think of is more important is cognitive fit. What's my
Yeah.
cognitive style? And
Yeah.
does this person need me right now to be like a hummingbird or a hawk? Like
Mm.
what level? So that's my sense, is
Yeah. Yeah.
if practitioners can sort of have a sense of these main pillars and then translate that into like, well, of course you're going to screw up. That's what
Yeah.
change feels like.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's, you don't, your interventions from research or theory do not to be need to be lofty or sound acting.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, a number of those patterns that you seem to indicate in there are long-standing. You know, they can't just be changed like that because they've been there, from childhood often. And people kind of switch under stress, will switch back into early patterns, and it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to overcome that. I'm a Stephen Barden, who did one of these interviews, talks about kind of navigational stances that we learn early on, a navigational stance to the world. Is it a world which we feel we could do business with it, or is it a world which feels in conflict with us that we've got to fight against? And those patterns are still there in senior leaders that he's interviewed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the pure stage 5, which is when you've had a period of time of being successful. So
Mm.
you've gone through contemplation, preparation, action, you've been successful, and then all of a sudden you just crash.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I warn people about. And I say, change isn't really, really like locked in until you've gone through a crash or two,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's the recovering from that.
Mm. You're also obviously drawing a lot of work and academic work and saying to people, this is a kind of important part of it. You clearly have a passion for the academic as well as the coaching. Tell me a bit about yourself as an academic.
Myself as an academic, um, at the moment, I'm probably more a receiver of theory and research and not a producer of it. Um, and for me, it's just sort of, so for me, this is terrible. My easy listening way of learning stuff academically is just trolling through the Institute of Coaching website. Like, oh, this is what's going on. Oh, that's what's going on. So I just like sit in my chair and
Yeah.
flip on the website, and I didn't know about that. So it's sort of, I'm sort of like the lazy person's academic because I'm
Yeah.
doing too many things.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, so I'd say just pulling in what are the smart people I know reading and doing, and then I do that.
Mhm.
So at the moment, I'm concentrating on writing a popular psychology book and coaching people. I'm not doing research now, just listening to other people's
Mm.
research.
Yeah. I'm noticed on your kind of your website, look like a book cover. Shh.
Oh yeah,
What?
yeah,
Shh.
yeah. Well, that one I'm not allowed to talk about exactly,
All
but it's
right. Okay.
basically um when to sort of when to speak up and when to shut up. But
Mhm.
what I'm doing now, and this is it's out there, but I'm going to do it, is the subtitle is called Lessons from a Harvard Psychologist, a Leadership Coach, and the Daughter of a Psychopath.
Right.
So many of the things I learned in life were from managing,
Yeah.
having a father as a criminal,
Hmm.
and negotiating that. So my upbringing would include things like lessons on how to lie and what's the
Yeah.
matter with you if you're not lying, which is
Yeah.
not normal upbringing.
Yeah.
But it has made me much more, that what I know is sort of grounded in a lot of grit rather than just sort of academia.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
that's why it's
Yeah.
lessons from all three.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I've met
Yeah.
some really, really incredible and some scary people.
Yeah. Can go just to get back question to kind of practitioners starting down the path of research. So we looked at practitioners consuming research, and you've spoken a bit about that, and as I said, the kind of work on the Institute's website is really useful to them in that way. But what advice would you give practitioners who want to start down the path of going into practicing, research in their practice?
Okay, well, the first thing to get is that you're probably a heck of a lot better at it than you think you are, but you just don't know the vocabulary of research. It
Mhm.
can sound really kind of overwhelming, but it's just vocabulary words.
Yes.
Uh, so, for example, we talk about one of the things I used to say early on in the when I would be teaching research at ICF, be saying is if you've been trained in how to use intuition, you actually have been trained in the scientific method. You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
Said so when you're working with someone and you get like a hunch, like, huh, I wonder if blah blah blah. Well, that's a hypothesis. So hunch equals hypothesis. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to automatically believe it.
Mhm.
My hypothesis is a hypothesis, my hunch is a hunch.
Yeah.
So, what are some methods I can use to figure out if my hunch is right or not? So you might ask questions, you might, give a questionnaire, you might even set up an experiment. You can do this or this and what works. But so, hypothesis is your hunch. Your methods is okay, how can I figure out if it's true or not? And then my results.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I thought so and so was really influenced by blah, blah, blah. I got these pieces of data that really support that. Or I thought blah, blah, but I got a bunch of pieces of data that like don't support it.
Mhm.
So, in intuition training, you collect your data and you see, does my intuition track to reality? And then if not, you iterate, you get a new hypothesis, and
Mhm.
then you do it again and you do it again. And so in essence, that's the scientific method. So I think a lot of it is overcome the phobia. Now you can read research stuff that really makes like your ears bleed. And there's things that I am like that as well. So first of all, know that, okay, here I am, been teaching at Harvard forever. I can read one of these articles and go, oh, mother of God, I do not understand this at all. And that's okay. Find a kind of tutor, maybe Google or chat it, like, hi, if this was English, what would this mean? Um, and just sort of go layer by layer, like, a moderator variable. It's like, huh?
Yes.
What's a moderator variable? It's like, oh, okay. You know, imagine you're a black box. You know, here's the stimulus that comes in. I have a mean boss.
Yeah.
Here's the output of my self-esteem dropped. What's inside there? And that's a moderator variable. It's like, it's
Mhm.
not something fancy. It's like,
Yeah.
what makes what happens between the cause and the effect.
Yeah.
And it could be your hypothesis, and that could be, oh, it's my family background.
Mhm.
If I've had through major hardship, I will be either more likely to tank afterwards or less likely to tank afterwards, but that's the question. So a lot of the stuff that sounds scary is vocabulary.
Yeah.
Same with statistics. Null set, blah, blah, blah. It's just
Yeah.
words. And
Yeah.
those words have definitions. And it's not that you have to be of a different order of intelligence to understand them. You just have to know your vocabulary, just
Mm.
like, you wouldn't get mad at yourself because you can't speak French right away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
same thing, you can't speak research right away. It's a
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Carol. I think that's very encouraging. It kind of demystifies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what I called the article. I have no idea where it is. It's in an early ICF thing. I can send it to you if you want. I think I called it Demystifying Coaching Research.
Yeah.
I think. I don't
Yeah.
remember. It was too many
Yeah.
years ago.
Well, if you can find it, send it to me, and I'll kind of put it up on the site with
Okay.
so
Oh, great.
to help practitioners read it.
Oh, I have to write that down because I will forget. Okay.
Okay. Kind of a
Yes. Yeah.
last kind of question is really kind of what's the question about our field you'd really like to see answered?
I guess it's what is it about ourselves and our clients that enables, or the opposite of enables, people to really change. Like, I can say, David, did you know blah, 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 blah? And, or we talk about blah, blah, blah. And it really sticks with you and you're able to make a change versus someone else. You can talk to the cows come home.
Yeah.
And there isn't a receptiveness. So that, I think, is really interesting. What makes, like, when we do an intervention, I mean, a lot of times people will like go, oh my God, Carol, you changed my life. And I'm like, yeah, I did like the same thing over there. And it
Yeah.
like did nothing.
Yeah.
And there, I think it's really important that as coaches, we don't think it's just our skill.
Mm.
But what is it about the other person or about the interaction where some people really shift and others don't?
Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carol. That was really enjoyable. And it will be really useful to practitioners to read, to listen to you. So thank you for that. And it's a delight to see you again.
Thank you. Oh, there's one other thing I forgot about.
Okay.
You probably know about this, but your people may not, which is probably the most user friendly research and whatever journal is the one that's called Coaching, an International Journal of Theory,
Mm.
Research Theory and Practice,
Yeah.
which I love because I started it, but I only started because Stephen Palmer made me. Literally, I'm like, you're out of your mind. You want me to start a journal and I've never edited anything in my life? And he's like, yeah, it's about right. I'm like, you're out of your mind. He goes, no, no, do it. And I said, okay, fine, but you have to find me someone to work with who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's when he found Tatiana Bakarov,
Yes.
and we started the journal together. But it is where, it is a little more sciency than when I was there.
Yeah.
But that is the spirit of the journal, which is
Yeah.
also the spirit of the institute, which is
Church. Yeah.
integrating
Yeah.
research, theory, and practice, because you need all three, or
Yeah.
you don't have a stool that you can sit on.
Mm. That's right. And of course, it's an open source journal, which helps.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, thank you for that. I
Mm.
forgot.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Carol.
Well, thank you, David.
Um, I'll talk again sometime. It's been a pleasure.
Same here.